Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This important program series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of a state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for 60 years.
My guest is the great bass baritone of the Metropolitan Opera and most other opera houses in the world, Jeffrey Wells. And Jeffrey, you just told me something astonishing in an occupation where ego is very important. Yeah. Jeffrey told me that he's not a great singer. Now, I am an opera fan, and I've heard Jeffrey at the Metropolitan, and you and I would differ. I think you've got a magnificent, clean, just pristine voice, and
well, I appreciate that.
It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm a frustrated opera singer, so this is like if I was a youngster and I got to meet Hopalong Cassidy, for goodness sakes. Jeffrey, you're born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
That's right, right here.
And opera was the furthest thing from your mind, was it not?
I never even knew what it was.
Never went to one, huh?
Not really, not until I got right before I went to college.
In fact, you were interested in the chiropractic
Absolutely,
art.
Absolutely. I was a jock. I played football and ran track at Broadmoor High School, and really had all intentions of becoming a pro football player at one point in my life.
He's 6'3", incidentally. So we're talking about football ready. Go ahead.
Yeah. So and then unfortunately, I got my back hurt playing football at Broadmoor, and decided to pursue a chiropractic career. Had a wonderful chiropractor here in town that I used to go to when I was playing football, Dr. Martello, and he encouraged me just to pursue it a little bit. And unfortunately, I didn't stay long. I was a very short-lived, just one semester, but preliminary studies. But at that point, I found out I could sing gospel music, so I started.
Is that where you began in the church?
Right, began in the church, and Catherine O'Neill, right here in Baton Rouge, was the first person that ever gave me a voice lesson, and she was a great encourager. And we basically worked on a lot of sacred and gospel music, and she introduced me to Earl Redding, where later became my teacher at LSU.
Jeffrey, so when this young chiropractor, football player, etc., do you remember when people began to talk to you about the possibility of opera?
Well, you know, Dr. Redding, it was wonderful. He made a prediction when I was a freshman at LSU, and he said, I really believe you'll be at the Met in 10 years. And I just kind of laughed at him because, you know, even to this day, I really don't read music. I have kind of what I call a photographic ear, and my coach will play it 2 or 3 times, and it's pretty much in my ear. But he made that prediction, and that was in 1972, and I made my Metropolitan Opera debut on their tour in September of 1980.
Jeffrey, incidentally, who, remember, does not read music, has only mastered 71 different roles in 6 different languages. That's pretty good for an old boy who doesn't read music. You talk about a good ear.
Well, not only a good ear, but a lot of hard work, a lot of hours in study. If my wife was here, she could tell you that I've learned to watch television, have a conversation with her, and memorize a 200-page Italian opera all at the same time, because if I couldn't do that, she'd never see me. You know.
Jeffrey, what was your first break in opera? When did you get to finally get on a stage and sing?
Well, the very first non-professional job I ever did in opera was at Southeastern Louisiana State University.
And you loved that school, didn't you, in Hammond?
I really did. I met a gentleman there named Frank Summers, and Frank, I believe, is still at the University of Miami and the head of the opera department there, if I'm not mistaken. And Frank just gave me a real love for the world of opera, and scared me to death, but he offered me the role of Falstaff in The Merry Wives of Windsor, and that was the first operatic role I did out at Southeastern, and I think I got the bug after that, but it took a while. It still took some time for me to really be convinced that this is something I needed to do.
And that you could support yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, a little detail.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Jeffrey, a voice teacher is beyond importance. For example, you and I both know folks who had beautiful voices and who got in the wrong hands.
Absolutely.
And the voice is wrecked.
Oh, absolutely. Gus, I really I can't mention any names, but, but there's some names now in my mind that I really believe would have had, probably would have had a pretty decent career if they would have not ended up in the wrong hands. And I've seen voices completely destroyed by the wrong hands. And to give you a quick anecdote about this, when I first went to New York to audition to get a job singing opera, and I told everybody, I said, I'm going to give myself 2 weeks to get a job singing opera in New York, and of course everybody laughed at me. And I made a call to New York.
That sounds crazy, isn't
Yes.
it?
Oh, it is. It is completely berserk, and people thought I was nuts. But I called the New York City Opera, and I asked for Beverly Sills. And when they rang her office, for some reason, and I just believe it was divine intervention, the secretary was gone that day. And Beverly Sills answered the phone herself. And I said, Miss Sills, you don't know me. I'm just a green kid from Baton Rouge. I feel like I have a decent natural talent. I'd love to sing for you. And she said, well, what experience have you got? What have you? And she finally said, well, I admire your chutzpah, and I will squeeze you into an audition. So I went to New York, gave myself, like I said, 2 weeks to get a job singing opera. I sang for her.
Were you nervous?
Very nervous.
Of course.
Hired me on the spot.
Wow.
And then she said, now look, don't get this the wrong idea. I'm not telling you don't need work. You need to work on languages. You need to work on stage deportment. You need, she gave me a whole list of things I need to work on with coaches. Then she made a very, I thought, a very brilliant comment. She said, who are you studying voice with? And I said, nobody. And she said, keep it that way.
Really?
And I didn't understand what she meant by that. I don't think she meant never study again, but she said, you had such a natural gift that she was so scared, just what you said, that I was going to end up with a teacher that was going to try to change all the natural God-given talent that I had. So for a good number of years, I didn't study.
You know, the best example of that in an arena that most people can relate to are these young pitchers who in high school are just brilliant and this blazing fastball. And they get up to the majors and somebody starts fooling with their technique and suddenly they're no longer prospects.
Right.
That's also applicable.
Absolutely.
So, Jeffrey, when did somebody first mention the possibility of the Metropolitan Opera?
Well, my introduction to a lot of people at the Met, coaches and staff members there, came in a summer session that I did with the American Institute of Musical Studies, which takes place every summer in Graz, Austria, and it's called AIMS. And somebody heard me sing at Houston Baptist University, and they offered me a full-paid scholarship to go to this institute and to work with some of the great coaches from the Metropolitan Opera. And so my introduction there that summer of, I think it was '77 was the first time I ever went. I met Joan Dorneman. She's the head prompter at the Met, the head Italian coach. I met Nico Costel, who was the language and linguist coach at the Met, speaks 7 languages fluently. So I had all this introduction there. And because of that and some of the concerts I was able to do that, I met Matthew Epstein at the time, and basically still is the most powerful agent in the world. Matthew said, you know, you've got a lot of work to do in the various areas, like Beverly was telling me. But I believe that, you know, when you're ready to start, I'd like to manage you.
Wow.
So in 1980, after 2 sessions...
This is like a fairy tale.
It really is. It really is, Gus. So after 2 years at Graz, 77 to 78, went back into church work, became a music director for a couple of years, and served at churches here in Baton Rouge and Houston. But 1980, God bless him, he's passed on now, Ralph Roberts. I used to be at Southeastern. I took 4 or 5 lessons with Ralph, and Ralph said, you've got to go for it. And case was, Matthew Epstein was there and poised and ready, and when I decided to start my career, he managed me the first year in the career and introduced me to people at the Met. He introduced me to Lotfi Mansouri, who at that time was the head of the Toronto Canadian Opera Company, and now is the San Francisco Opera. So he was my mentor, Lotfi Mansouri, and trained me, did all the stage deportment, all the movement on stage that was so incredible for my career. And so basically the first job I ever had was the New York City Opera. The second job I ever had in my life was the Metropolitan Opera tour. So I started off at the top. And
I've never heard a story like that before, and as I say, I'm a fan. Now, it's the night of your Metropolitan Opera debut in the house in New York.
Right.
And those chandeliers go up into the ceiling and the lights go off. How does it feel to Jeffrey Wells, out of chiropractic school and football playing, to be backstage? You know in a few minutes you're going to step on that stage, and in effect, you're going to be made or unmade right there.
That's exactly right.
What's the feeling?
Well, I'm not sure what was the problem that night. I should have been a nervous wreck, but I was so relaxed. And I'll tell you, we'll maybe we can talk about my friend Luciano Pavarotti, but Pavarotti came to my dressing room and wished me luck and gave me a few Italian phrases, in bocca al lupo and all these kind of things to wish me luck. But he made me feel such at ease, and I knew that I had a friend in Luciano at that point. And to open the show, because the show I did was Il Trovatore, and then I opened it with the 10-minute aria. And to open the show in the beginning of the Met season with the grand ball after the opening night. So there was such an incredible host of things for me to be nervous about. I mean, here's Cheryl Milnes and Pavarotti and Ava Martin and
world class.
Yeah,
cast,
all legends really. And but it turned out to be a great success, and you know, I was blessed that night to be a part of that. It was great.
What an experience. Yeah. Now, talk to us a little bit. The #1 program, year after year, fundraising on this public television station are the Three Tenors.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about Pavarotti and Domingo.
Okay. Well, Luciano, like I said, every time he sings at the Met, I would say 95% of the time I'm in the opera with him. Now, I don't necessarily believe this, but somebody in the Met management said that he actually asked for me because he likes familiarity. He likes people who he's worked with to be a part. He can trust them. And I don't know if that's really the case, but if he has asked for me, I appreciate it. But he's the last couple of years, he's gotten a little more nervous. He has, you know, the voice is not working maybe exactly the way it used to. And so I noticed that he's a little bit more apprehensive, a little more nervous. But he's always treated me very well. We've had a couple little run-ins where the stage director would ask me to do something, and he wanted me to do something totally different, and then he'd get a little angry. But Pavarotti's the type of guy that'll blow up, and literally 5 minutes later, it's like it never happened. He totally forgets about it.
When his voice was youthful, in that Daughter of the Regiment, for example, when he was sang Tonio, that had to be as lovely a voice as God has ever put into the human throat.
No question about it. And I think that's what frustrated him a couple of seasons ago when he tried to do the Daughter of the Regiment again, and unfortunately it was you know, it was not a success. And he admits that it wasn't, and admits that he probably shouldn't have done it.
Is Domingo as nice a guy as he appears in interviews and so on?
Nicer.
Really?
Probably one of the greatest colleagues that I could possibly work with is Placido. He's so generous and so you know, loving to everybody.
And he's going to conduct you, you told me.
Yeah, and this past season we did Carmen together, and we had a good sword fight. In fact, when we videoed the last 3 performances in this spring, I doubt seriously they'll put this on the video, but he came after me and I came across him and the sword split right in half, and one sword went flying this way and one sword went flying. So, and here he is ready to stab me with this little nub. So it was really a funny situation.
He's a brilliant musician, isn't he?
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
Just reads anything. And that's the difference between him and Pavarotti. I'm not saying Pavarotti is not a great musician, because he is.
I understand.
But Placido is just an incredible, plays the piano, he can conduct, he does it all.
And how does that voice stay youthful? What is he, a man 60 years old?
I think Placido's about 56.
Yes,
57.
but the voice is, he can still sing the lyric roles, and he can do the heaviest stuff, even the Wagner.
Oh, he's amazing, and the man never stops. I mean, he's got his hands in so many things. Washington Opera,
Is his
LA
production
Opera.
just perfect? Is that?
I think he's got a great technique. He
Yeah.
must have an incredible technique to have the longevity that he's had and to do so many different types of roles and types of genre that he does. It's just really incredible.
Now, Jeffrey, you and I were discussing a young colleague at the Met, a young tenor, and he was hailed as, the next Pavarotti, really. though he was not an Italian tenor.
Right.
And the critics have never found that he lived up to the hype.
Right.
Is hype a big part of that world, the opera world?
Oh, I would say in some artists' situations, I'd say it's probably 75% of hype. And as I was telling you, with money and publicity machine behind you, you can have an incredible career with very little talent. It's a shame to say that, but I've seen it at the Met particularly. And the way the Met cast leading roles is who's got the most recordings or who's got the recording at the time. It has very little to do, I personally think, with whether you can deliver the major goods or not. In some cases, it's true, but a lot of hype.
Jeffrey, it must be a sad thing to have a colleague whom you have unbridled respect for as a man or a woman and a musician. I'm thinking of someone like Cheryl Mills, and to see the voice begin to grow older. And
Right.
that must be is it a little frightening to a young singer like yourself when you say, well, you know, that's kind of the inevitable? Does it affect you that way?
Well, it does. Cheryl's an old friend of mine, and Cheryl and I have done so many operas together. We've done most of the Verdi operas together, and it's frustrating for me to hear the voice, dissipating like it's doing. I'd like to see Cheryl maybe retire from singing and maybe do master classes and teaching, which he's very good at. I hate to see any artist go past the prime where people, don't remember those great, incredible years that he had of singing.
He was the best.
Oh,
yeah.
He was one of the best American baritones of our time. And now the way he's singing, I just hate to see people have a different opinion of him. I like to see him go out.
Jeffrey, do these great singers, Pavarotti, Domingo, people like that, do they give a young singer vocal tips, or is that a no-no that no one dare intrude into another person's technique and so on? I'm just curious.
Well, I think, they do for the really young artists, beginning artists, I would say in their late 20s, early 30s.
They'll tell them quietly.
Oh, yeah, quietly. They will never embarrass them in front of a rehearsal that we have, but sometimes they'll take them aside and say, you ought to think about this. And particularly with Pavarotti, if it has something to do with the Italian language, which Americans, may not have the grasp of, he will give them a little tip about how to phrase that Italian phrasing, and which he's done with me on a couple occasions, and I really appreciated it.
What a teacher!
Oh yeah, with the Italian repertoire, he's one of the best.
Opera singers are like politicians. Some stay too long at the fair, though.
Oh yeah.
And another question I wanted to ask you: how important to the singer on the stage with that huge cast? How important is that conductor?
Nobody understands just how important a good conductor is, and I've worked with some guys that have the score completely memorized. The conductor didn't even use it. There's a little maestro that's I've worked with down in New Orleans, Anton Coppola.
Yes.
And Maestro Coppola he's got to be 80 years old, but he has most of all the Verdi and Puccini operas, this entire score memorized. Not only does he know every orchestra part, but he knows your line and everybody else's line. And to work with somebody with that kind of knowledge of the score, boy, you certainly relax. And I've been with other conductors that never got their head out of the book, never gave you a cue, and that's extremely difficult, particularly if the opera. Huh? It's very scary, and particularly if you don't have a real grasp on the opera.
We're in, as we do this program, we're in May of 1997. What are the next months? What all? Give us an idea of Jeffrey Well's life for the remainder of this summer.
Well, as we know, I'm helping my friend Bob Grayson tonight, actually, May 2nd, to raise money for the LSU Opera Fund, and then from here, I will be going to Japan in the middle of May with the Metropolitan Opera, where I'll actually be singing the roles of Escamillo and Zuniga both.
Wow.
In Carmen, and Placido will be conducting that. We'll be in Nagoya and Yokohama and Tokyo. And then from there...
he must be the ultimate singer's conductor, huh?
Well, he really is. I mean, his conducting skills maybe aren't like James Levine, but for a singer, I think is a wonderful conductor. And then from there, we come back from Japan, we go back to New York, and we have a wonderful thing. I think it's been great for New York. We do free concerts in the park, and I'll be doing Escamillo again in the parks, and this will be a great experience. And then hopefully I'll have 2.5 months off where I can study, because I have to prepare La Sonnambula for Washington Concert Opera in September, where we'll sing. And then I have to do William Tell in San Francisco, where I play the bad guy, Gessler. And then I go back to the Met and cover Giovanni, I think one performance, and do some covers of Giovanni. And then Tales of Hoffman at the Met and Stifelio at the Met. And then I go back to San Francisco, and I think I do 7 performances of Escamillo again.
Jeffrey, do you dread hearing that somebody wants you for a new opera that you don't know? In other words, you have to think, oh my goodness, here comes that commitment to learning this thing.
Yeah.
And we talking about an opera score, 200 pages.
At least, yeah.
So, what is your favorite role?
Oh, well, I'd have to say all the devil roles. Gounod's Faust, Mephistopheles. I love, I'm starting to learn the Boito Mephistopheles. Rake's Progress, I love Nick's Shadow. I love the American composer Carlisle Floyd's Susanna, where I get to play the evangelist Olin Blitch.
Now, Jeffrey, one of the most unique stories about you, a fella hailing from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is when you were in San Francisco, and there was a Russian opera company came to San Francisco. Is that correct?
Well, it was a major part of the Kirov.
Opera.
And Maestro Valery Gergiev, who conducted, is the head of the Kirov. And basically, they didn't necessarily bring the Kirov as an entity, but they brought a lot of their artists. And San Francisco Opera flew me back, I think it was in '94, summer of '94, to audition for Maestro Gergiev while he was conducting in France. And they flew me there, and I waited 3 days to even have 15 minutes to see this guy. Sat in my hotel room, finally sang for him, and I basically learned the aria from the opera Ruslan and Ludmilla. I learned it in about 3 days with the Russian rabbi that lives in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, taught me the Russian, and I sang it for him, and he hired me. And so it ended up being that I was the only American in this all-Russian cast of Ruslan in San Francisco of '95.
And got rave reviews.
Yeah, it went very, very well, and it was the hardest thing I've done in my career. I basically worked about 10 months to prepare for this thing. And as I was telling you before, it was very frustrating because after the third performance, I had 5 scheduled, I got sick. And one of the most frustrating things in my life, because I had worked so hard to prepare for this, and then getting sick and having to cancel my last 2 performances was very, very difficult.
Jeffrey, when that time comes that you feel that it's time to at least leave the stage, that part of it, what do you want to do? How would you like to spend the many years left of your life?
Well, I love to direct. I'm trying so hard to get one of the smaller regional companies like New Orleans to let me come in and direct Susanna, and actually direct it and maybe even sing in it before I get to the point where I can't sing. But I'd love to direct some, and I'd also like to get back into massage therapy. I know I was too late to go back to chiropractic school, but I'd love to do massage therapy work. I enjoy doing that immensely.
Do you still enjoy athletics?
Not as much as I used to, but as I was saying, I'm studying so much of the time. Every free minute that I have, I'm even trying to prepare for the year ahead. But I know this summer I'm going to really make an effort to get myself back in really good shape.
One quick question, because I could talk to you for a week. How many performances in a week are you prepared to sing before you say, this is going to hurt my throat?
Right.
How often are you prepared to sing?
Well, at the Met, the most I've ever performed, I think it was 5 performances. And, people think about Broadway, and they say, well, those guys do 8 performances. Well, they don't understand. First of all, they have a mic that's positioned in their wig or their hair, and they barely even have to open their mouth to be heard. And it's not nearly the same type of, physical singing that we have to do.
Jeffrey, you're a delightful man, and I have heard Jeffrey at the Met, and he is a great artist. And all Louisiana can be proud of him. And thank you so much for joining us on Louisiana Legends. As you can see, there's hero worship going on here.
I guess.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you, my friend.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This important program series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of a state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for 60 years.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or send $19.95 to Louisiana Legends, care of Louisiana Public Broadcasting, 7860 Anselmo Lane, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70810. Please allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery.